Hello, good morning. What's up, everyone? It's your host, Carlos Ponce, here in Advancio Talks. And this is another episode of the show. We're live and we've got an incredible guest with us today. I'll let her introduce herself in a minute. Uh, but if you're just discovering us, welcome to the show. So if you've been here since the beginning, like 2022, well, you know exactly what we are about. So, quick rundown for newcomers. Advancio Talks is where we sit down with the people actually building the future of tech. Not just talking about it, doing it. CTOs, founders, innovators, the folks making decisions that matter and driving a real change in the industry. So we bring you conversations with visionaries, operators, and leaders who are shaping tomorrow's technology landscape. So people who with real stories, real results, and insights you won't find anywhere else. So whether you're drinking your morning coffee, commuting to work, or just curious about what's actually happening in tech, you are in the right place. And we got stories and insights coming your way that you definitely don't want to miss. And for that, we have today Anjana Desai. I hope I got that right. We
Got
got
it.
Anjana Desai, our esteemed guest, and she's the founder and CEO of Juntrax Solutions. So, Anjana, welcome to the show and thanks for being with us today here.
Thanks, Carlos. It's a pleasure being here.
It's our pleasure as well. Anjana, well, before we get into the topic, because I know that we prepared a very interesting topic for today. Before we get into that, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit, tell us and the audience a little bit about you, your story, your background, and anything you want to share with the audience. And then we're going to move on to the company, and then we move on to the topic. Thank you, Anjana.
Sure, Carlos. Again, my name is Anjana Desai. I'm the founder and CEO of Juntrax Solutions. I come with about 20 plus years in the ERP space, and I started out my career as a developer and then moved on to basically helping build products for the ERP space, HRMS financials. And that was kind of my journey. And then I would say about 8 years ago, I decided to take a break from that and look at what is going to be my next thing.
Hmm.
In that journey, I found my husband and his partner, they were struggling with uh, basic automation issues and information overload, fragmented systems. They were trying to build a company in three different geographic locations. So I suggested, they should, take up automation, and they were 50 employees at that time, and that's how I kind of got started. And I did give them some options to look at, and they did, but really nothing fit what they were looking for at the time. And that's kind of how I started building Juntrax.
Hmm.
And here I am.
Cool. Well, it's good that we're going to have the opportunity to learn what John Drax is about in a minute, which leads me to the second part, which is precisely John Trax itself. It would be great if you could share a little bit about what John Drax does. What problem you solve. What is your value proposition? Can you walk us through the roadmap of that you've been following over the last few years building John Trax?
Yeah. So, we're we didn't take the typical product development roadmap. Usually, when you're looking at an idea or something, we build a POC, and then we have it in the market and start selling, and kind of scale the roadmap. Um, we kind of started differently. We built a product for a customer that was having several pain points. So it
Hmm.
became a long product development journey for us. And then we started into the, okay, now we've built it for one. Let's see if we can solve this problem for other similar kind of companies, right? So
Hmm.
that's kind of how our journey started. And in terms of our value proposition, basically, we wanted to uh, give the same kind of um, experience to small and medium-sized enterprises who were you know uh, in the multi-location space, where they had companies in different geographic locations, to streamline their operations from three different aspects. One is managing their workforce, managing their work, and managing their money coming in and money going out. And that's kind of how we felt that, usually those kind of products were available for large organizations, like SAPs and the Oracles and all of that. But
Hmm.
now, with technology changing, we were able to leverage the same kind of functionality and user experience, and give that to small and medium sized enterprises
Hmm.
at the kind of value that they can afford. um, so I think that's basically our value proposition, is really solve the problems that customers are having,
Hmm.
and give them the tools to kind of scale and grow.
Scale. Speaking of which, that leads me into today's topic, right? Because we're going to be discussing building operations at scale, right? So that's our topic, as we agreed on. We're going to be discussing, getting ready to hire and grow fearlessly. So let me start with the first question that I have for you, Anjana. Well, you have seen firsthand how operational chaos can cripple growth. So, when companies are scaling rapidly, what operational warning signs should they watch for?
Yeah, so I think one a cup my point is, being having worked in large organizations, I think process and systems need to be
Hmm.
in place. And if you don't have that, that can be a potential, that can potentially lead to chaos as you're growing. So having proper documentation, how processes should flow. Example, when you're onboarding your employee, you want to make sure that they're onboarded, they're clear on their roles and responsibilities, and they have what they need. Because the first, I would say, 20 days, the employees at your organization, they should feel acclimated to the environment. They should feel comfortable knowing what they're going to be doing, what their job is. And I think that onboarding process should not last. If it's lasting more than a week, then that's kind of a warning sign. I think you need to really get your onboarding in place. I would say communication. um, Making sure that what is the formal channels of communication for certain types of approvals and things, that's also very important. Your quality, how are you managing your quality in terms of any product that's going out to your customer, or anything
Hmm.
that's going out to your customer, you have to manage the quality. So all of these processes need to be really well thought out and well documented and well integrated in your organization, so
Hmm.
everybody knows what they need to do.
Absolutely. And there's another thing that if I recall correctly, you mentioned a client who achieved 4 or 5 times team growth. So tell us about that transformative client and what role did talent acquisition and team scaling play in that success story?
Well, yeah. So I think our first customer that we had was operating in three different geographic locations. So they
Hmm.
had employees in the U.S., they had employees in Netherlands, and they had employees in India. And just there were 50 employees at that time, and they were disparate systems. They were mostly on spreadsheets. They didn't really have a central place for all their information.
Mm-hmm.
So the onboarding part, I think, made the most difference. Excuse me. The onboarding part made the most difference. So, to give you an example, when they got onto Juntrax, right, they came on from 50 employees to 100 employees and then to 200 employees.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened in that journey was the onboarding became very seamless. All the, as the employees came into the organization, all their documentation, their information was of, they were able to add in, they had visibility about their information as well. The HR manager or the admins were able to onboard them relatively quickly. Their projects and things started um, being extremely organized. Just imagine when you're scaling, if you have, you go from 10 projects to 100 projects, just trying to manage all that information, and understanding who gets onto what project is also very important. That kind of insights you didn't have before that they
Mm-hmm.
had, and they having an automated system equipped them for that growth. And The other thing that we found is when you do scale, and when you do you'll have other compliances that come from your customers too. If you have big customers, they require you to be compliant in a lot of things. So having a automated system, and uh, having that capability of having all your information on one system helps you in that growth journey. And that's what we found with this particular customer that went from 4 to
Mm-hmm.
um, 4x in terms of growth.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome. That's incredible. So, and I that ties into how you help companies scale from operational chaos to clarity. So, how does this operational foundation affect their capacity to scale? How what can you tell me about that?
Well, I think if you don't, like I mentioned, if you don't have your processes in place, if you don't have a communication infrastructure, if you don't have a just these certain tenants, even an automated system, you know manual spreadsheets and managing things on spreadsheets can work, to a certain degree. I can give you an example.
Yeah,
Is our
please.
first customer. They were operating off of, they were managing all their projects and everything on Excel, and they
Mm-hmm.
were also managing all their invoicing and all of that on Excel as well. But we came to a point where that spreadsheet went from 10 to 100 to 200 to 500 to 1,000, and trying to figure out, information in that amount of data is very uh, time consuming, and can be just very frustrating as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, spending your time, spending your time on just um, trying to retrieve information, trying to find out where things are. And that's what we found with this customer is when they had, before they got into an automated solution,
Mm-hmm.
they were spending most of their time trying to find information, and gather information in their meetings. But after Juntrax, they were able to have their meetings from the product itself. So half of their time in finding information was gone, because they were able to get what they needed from every area of their business from this product itself. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that became a big win, and I think that's where it is at. It is having your processes in place, having your communication infrastructure in place, having an automated system. I think that does wonders to the structuring your whole organization flow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How do you do it? I mean, can you walk us through, for especially for all of those who might be on the at the layman level, so to speak, right? So how do you help companies prepare operationally for the speed and scalability that today's tech, the today's market demands?
Yeah, so I think so if you get into more the specifics, I would say, there are three areas of your business that you want to focus on. One is the workforce, right? Where when you're preparing for scale and growth, you're looking at your workforce and increasing your workforce. So you need to first of all look at your organization, see what your roadmap is going to be in terms of that scale. Are you going to be hiring? What is going to be your hiring look like? Is it going to be within 30 to 50%? Is it in the next year? And if you're in that position where you know that fact, then I would say go and do a check and see in your organization whether are your certain processes, are they documented, are your the work that's going on in your company. For example, for a tech company, you want to know that do you have your process of requirements gathering and approval process to make sure that the requirements are correct, whether they're your design system, that whole journey of how to get a design together, is
Mhm.
that in place, and the different checkpoints between requirements, design, development, quality, QA, and release. Those checkpoints are documented and followed. I think that's very critical.
Mhm.
So that's, I think, one process. The communication, and collaboration is very important. So ensuring that you've got a communication infrastructure, example, whether you're using Slack, Teams, or something like that, to make sure that, or your emails, making sure all that is in place and everybody's engaged, and informed that this is going to be the correct way to engage, on certain procedures in terms of approvals, or even simple as taking leaves and things like that. What is your process, your employee policies on data security and compliance? All of that needs to be documented and also communicated to all your employees. So I think those are the um, areas that I would focus on.
Okay. Is my assumption correct? This is from what I recall from your company information. You focus on multi-location businesses, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that I think that aligns very well with what I would loosely call global hiring or talent strategies or team growth strategies. So my
Yes.
question is, what operational challenges would you say arise when managing distributed teams? In other words, how do you help professional services companies prepare operationally for speed and scalability?
Yeah, so I think uh, the multi-location part that you just mentioned is can become challenges on multiple levels, right? Because you have a distributed team in different time zones. So trying to ensure that you are very well cognizant of that. You're cognizant of the culture between the different organizations, how they work, what their norms are in terms of how their working style is, what they are. I think there is a huge understanding that needs to happen when you're working in, and I found that in working in Netherlands, working in India, the cultural differences in terms of work, and also the time zone, being cognizant
Mhm.
of making sure that how you're scheduling meetings or certain core work that needs to happen at what times, that becomes very important, and making sure that everybody feels engaged, not having like communication silos, right? Sometimes because of the cultural the cultural differences in terms of work, I think that what they understand and how they understand it also needs to be a little bit streamlined, and you have to take more care in that. So I would say in scaling um, distributed teams, I think these are certain areas that we have to give a little bit more importance to. And then I think if you got that organized, then I think you can um, scale. And of course, if you have an automated solution that does that, it just makes things a lot easier
Hmm.
as well. So
Right, right. Scaling is something that I would definitely, that I think it's should be based on a decision making process that's based on data, right?
yes.
And I believe you emphasize making confident decisions backed by precise data. So how how should this apply to talent acquisition and retention strategies? What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I think my perspective is this. I feel that, there are certain tasks that are a must, like so initially when you're building a company, right, you're more focused on the managing and tracking of information. You're focused on getting everything together, your processes and everything in place. Then you move on. But I feel the most essence of any job function is strategy and the creativity that comes from the data, right? And you can do that if you have a system that gives you the different kinds of analytics or data that you're looking for. I'll give you an example.
Hmm.
Suppose you have a system that you've been using, and you are able to extract that every July you have the highest number of people taking leaves. Okay. and and then an HR manager can go in and say, oh, you know what, we've seen that, every July this happens. For a professional services company, that can turn into a project, a staffing nightmare, right? So how do you, with that data, then now you can implement strategies and maybe a reward system or something to encourage employees to not take not take off as much in July as before. So data helps you drive strategic decisions, and I
Right.
think that is where we all need to get to. Forget the manage and track, and once you have a system in place, that will happen. But the real essence of anything is in strategy and forecasting and predicting what we can do in the future. So let's say if we're running low on a PO from a
Mhm.
customer, we can forecast that, okay, this is where the project is at. We can forecast and say, okay, let's change this because we only have about 1 month or 2 months of runway left. Let's make sure that project is uh, we're making tweaks to our teams, or all of that. So I think the creative part and the strategy part becomes such an important part in this. And that is how I feel that scaling and uh, scaling a company, it's becomes so much essential because you
Mhm.
build in efficiencies as well into that.
This is fascinating. So, Anjana, well, actually, unfortunately, we're almost coming up on time, and we only have time for a couple more questions. So, I guess I wouldn't want to end the conversation without asking you. I think this is important. What is the most common operational pitfall professional services firms encounter when they expand quickly without adequate operational preparation?
Yeah, I think that is. just like I mentioned, is I think the biggest ones are not having your processes really well designed. Because see, what happens in is a lot of times when processes are not well defined, you will have, let's say, John came from IBM, and Jack came from Apple. They'll be using, oh, I did this at Apple. Jack will say, I did this at IBM. So they're just using their own their own experiences to run that particular that particular operation that they're working on. And that doesn't really build the culture of the company. I think that unification of processes, a proper thought that goes
Mhm.
in making sure that this is how we want to run the company, that is the most critical point, I would say, for any kind of a company that is ready to scale. So
Mhm.
get your processes in place. Have a real well-intentioned thought put into that. What do you want to do that aligns with your core values, your mission? And get those the processes documented, processes in place, and make sure that you have that disseminated to all the employees, and the stakeholders and the leaders that are managing this, because I think that will help you have a really rich cultural organization, as well as prepare you to scale. And of course,
Mhm.
an automated system is definitely a need if you're going to do that. So without that, it's going to be very, very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And as like I said, unfortunately, we're about to wrap up today's show. But after the show, there's always the future. There's always more coming up. We things don't stop here. So in that sense, about the future, your vision for the future, and looking ahead, how do you see integrated business operations evolving to support the increasingly competitive and fast-paced world of professional services companies?
Well, I think AI is the future. It is inevitable that everyone has to adopt it in some form or another. I would say with caution, though, with proper security measurements in place, because it is important company data that
Mhm.
you're dealing with. So I think the adoption of AI. I think the future lies in, again. Managing and tracking should not even be a concern for anybody. They should
Mhm.
not spend any much time. They should be really spending the time on uh, getting the data for strategic alignment, strategic forecasting, and strategic growth. I think that's kind of where my viewpoint is on that.
Well, what can I say, Anjana? This is Anjana. I'm sorry. This has been beyond enlightening. So, any final words of wisdom for the audience that you want them to remember you by?
Well, I would just say that we started out solving our customer problems. I think the focus should be always on solving somebody's problem, because I think that's where we should all be. I think it just makes a world a better place. You just solve somebody's problems. So I would say, just instead of everything else, I say we're a product company built with that ethos of solving customer problems, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Well, what can I say, Anjana? Thank you so much for having been with us on the show. And we're going to make sure that after this episode, this is live, we're doing this live, folks. But there's going to be more because we're recording it. So we'll be making sure that we're getting the word out about what Anjana's doing with Juntrax. So stay tuned for everything that's going to be showing up on your feeds in the next few weeks. So, Anjana, how can people get a hold of you? How can they contact you if they want to?
Well, I am on LinkedIn. So Anjana Desai is my handle on LinkedIn. You can see it
Right
there.
there, right? That's the
Yes,
one.
yes, that's the one. And Juntrax.com is our website, and all the information is there. So yeah, check us out.
There you have it, folks. Check them out at Juntrax.com. And also, well, you have Anjana's LinkedIn page, which is right there too. Desai Anjana. And oh, one more option is the company's LinkedIn page right there, which
Yes.
is right there at the bottom. So, folks, make a note of it. And the only thing left for me to do is just remind the audience we always, every week, we have a guest at this day and time. And stay tuned on our company website there on Tech Talks, advancio.com/tech-shows. We're about to update. Once we get confirmation, we're going to be updating the page for the upcoming guest. Stay tuned, folks. And with that being said, Anjana, it's been a great honor and a pleasure to have you here. And well, I encourage the viewers to reach out to Anjana for more. And Anjana, thank you so much again. We're very
Thank you,
grateful to have you.
Carlos. It was a
Okay,
pleasure myself here too.
absolutely. And Anjana, stay tuned as we stay with me as we go off the air. And the rest of you folks, see you next week right here on Advancio Talks.